The first light of dawn slanted over the mesa like a blade, burning gold across the dry, cracked earth. Dust swirled in the low valleys, caught by the sudden gusts that always ran along the ridge lines. Ethan Carver moved slowly, boots crunching over the loose stone, his hand brushing the handle of his sidearm out of habit, not necessity. His ranch had been quiet for months, a monotonous cycle of repair, irrigation, and patrol. But today, something smelled off, something he couldn't place, a tension that tugged at the edges of his nerves. Even the scrub birds, usually shrill and intrusive, were silent. He saw it first across the ravine, a dark shape against the twisted branches of a gnarly juniper. At first, he thought it was a carcass. Then the glint of cloth, the unmistakable curve of a small, fragile form dangling from the tree, made him freeze. A girl, no older than 12, bound at the wrists, her head tilted forward, hair matted with dust and blood. Around her neck, a crude wooden sign swung in the breeze, carved letters raw and angry, "White man don't forgive." Ethan's stomach pitched, a cold mixture of fear and outrage. He had fought wars far from this land, skirmishes where every second demanded decisions that carried lives, but nothing had prepared him for this. Not this quiet horror, not this girl, caught between vengeance and innocence. He dropped his pack, crouched low, scanning the horizon. No tracks, no signs of movement. Whoever had done this had vanished as thoroughly as smoke. He moved closer, careful, his eyes flicking over the terrain like a trained scanner. Desert wind carried the faint scent of gun oil and cordite, an almost imperceptible trace, but it was enough. This wasn't random. It was meant. He could feel the pattern in the chaos, and instinct told him there were consequences lurking in the shadows. "Hey," he whispered, voice rough with disbelief. The girl stirred, eyes wide, dark, reflecting a fear he recognized from every battlefield he'd walked, the fear of absolute helplessness. She shivered as he approached, and he noticed the crude lacerations along her arms, the subtle bruising that spoke of a long, cruel journey. Ethan's mind clicked into operational mode. He could feel the old patterns rising, from desert skirmishes and insurgent raids, the careful balance between brute force and improvisation. First, extraction. Then intel. Then containment. He knelt beside the girl, carefully loosening the knots of her bindings, noting the methodical tightness, a signature, not random cruelty. Whoever had done this wanted the message delivered. The girl's breathing was ragged, but she didn't cry. "You're safe now," he said, voice low but firm, a promise he had delivered to more soldiers than he could count. "I've got you." She nodded once, barely perceptible, and he pulled her into his body, shielding her from the wind, the sun, and the emptiness around them. The calm on his shoulder crackled. He barely had time to flip the switch. "Carver. You copy? Any movement in your sector?" It was Captain Lila Vargas, field commander of the border security unit that had contracted him for advisory patrols on this outer ridge. Her voice was tight, military, disciplined, but under it, he detected the worry, the unspoken recognition that something larger was unfolding. "I've got a situation," he said, keeping his voice low. "Child. Injured. Message left on site. No sign of the perpetrators. I need extraction." Vargas didn't answer immediately. Then, extraction. Coordinates. Fastest route. Stay concealed. Ethan flicked his eyes across the mesa. Lines of shadow suggested that the terrain could be used, that the ridges and gullies could mask movement from any aerial surveillance or enemy recon drones. He marked the path mentally, approach south, shadow of canyon edge, avoid thermal detection from east-facing slope. Calculated, precise. Got it. Moving. He hoisted the girl onto his back, taking care not to aggravate her injuries. Each step was deliberate, a mix of balance and caution. He could feel the strain on his muscles, the stress on the joints, the subtle ache in his lower back from carrying weight he hadn't accounted for in years. The desert had a way of punishing overconfidence. The drone hum hit his ears first, a soft, almost melodic buzz. Not friendly. Not local patrol. This was industrial-grade surveillance, modified for long-range recon, likely military spec. Heat signatures flared in his peripheral HUD, readouts projected through the visor he kept tucked under his hat brim. They were scanning for movement, for heat anomalies. He froze, flattening against a rocky outcrop. The girl whispered something, soft, hesitant, her accent thick, foreign, a rhythm that pulled at his gut. He couldn't understand her fully, but fear and warning were universal. She shook her head violently when he raised his finger to calm her, eyes darting toward the ridge above. Then he saw them, 3 figures, cloaked in adaptive camo, moving along the ridge with synchronized precision. Weapons low, scanning, a patrol. Advanced optics reflected off lenses in the sunlight. They were not ordinary mercenaries. These were professionals, trained for extraction denial, for tactical ambushes. And they had left the girl as bait. Ethan's mind raced. He couldn't outrun them in open terrain. He couldn't simply engage them, too few, too exposed. His options narrowed: shadow the gullies, move slow, rely on heat masking, improvise. He calculated the distance, 2 clicks to the canyon exit, enough cover to remain undetected if he kept low and used the terrain masking. He flexed fingers over the calm Vargas. Contact. Hostiles, 3, ridge line. Advanced patrol. Moving to intercept. Negative. Extraction still valid. Copy, Carver. Hold position. Drone feed updating. Reinforcements en route, ETA 6 mics. Maintain stealth. Ethan exhaled, tension coiling through him like steel. 6 minutes. Not enough to fight openly, just enough to maneuver intelligently. He shifted, nudging the girl into a lower crouch, using his body as a shield. Step by step, inch by inch, they moved along the shadowed path, the dry leaves and stone whispering beneath their weight. Suddenly, one of the patrols stopped. Motion sensors were online, electronic eyes humming in their lenses. Ethan froze. The girl's eyes widened. He thought quickly, scanning the landscape for any exploitable weakness. And then he saw it: the ridge line had a subtle overhang, an old landslide scar, partially obscured. Thermal reading was interrupted by rock shadow. If he moved the girl under it, he could mask his heat signature for long enough to bypass them. Risky, but plausible. Hold your breath, he whispered. The patrol scanned, paused, then moved on, oblivious to the life inches below them. Ethan exhaled slowly. Adrenaline burned in his chest, a familiar, necessary ache. They were close. Too close. A misstep now would be fatal. He pressed onward, muscles taut, senses sharpened to the smallest detail. Then the ground shivered slightly beneath him. A drone, a small, reconnaissance model, hovering silently, nearly invisible to the naked eye. Its cameras panned across the terrain, thermal sensors flicking, scanning, evaluating. Ethan's visor pinged a warning. It had him in focus. No time. Calculations ran in his head: drone speed, range, lens angles, and heat masking capabilities. He lifted the girl just enough to duck beneath a rock overhang, recalibrating her body heat with his own. The drone's optics swept past, missing the subtle thermal signature. Heart racing, he froze, counting seconds, letting the quiet stretch into eternity. Then a crack, like a branch snapping underfoot, echoed unnaturally across the canyon. One of the patrols jerked, weapons raised. Ethan tensed. The girl's hand found his arm, gripping tightly. He whispered, "Steady. Don't move." Another snap. The patrol was closing in, now aware. Ethan had mere seconds to act. Improvisation became instinct. He flung a small piece of reflective metal toward the opposite ridge, catching sunlight and creating a flash that drew their attention. Instantly, they pivoted, scanning the wrong direction. Using the moment, he surged forward, sprinting through the narrowest part of the gully, the girl clinging to him. Bullets struck rock around him, scattering dust and shrapnel. The desert became a kaleidoscope of threat and opportunity. He ducked behind boulders, rolled, adjusted. Each step was calculated, each breath measured. Extraction wasn't guaranteed, only plausible. Finally, the canyon mouth appeared ahead, open terrain but with immediate cover on the other side. Reinforcements weren't there yet. But he had the angle, the momentum, and a fleeting advantage. He pushed the girl forward, using his body as a human shield, sprinting toward the faint hum of the extraction drone waiting near a dry riverbed. As they cleared the canyon's lip, the first shots rang out from distant rifles, pinging off rocks like angry insects. Ethan's visor lit up with telemetry, minor scrapes on his armor, but functional. The girl's breathing was ragged, uneven, but alive. He glanced back. The patrol regrouped on the ridge, cursing, reorganizing, their superior tech giving them confidence. But he had bought time, not victory. He slid into the riverbed, dust coating his uniform, hands shaking, adrenaline still screaming through him. The extraction drone descended, lights flashing, blades whirring softly. He lifted the girl into the open cargo space, securing her while keeping his eyes on the ridge. The patrol was still watching, but they lacked line of sight, and reinforcements were seconds away. "Ethan, status?" Vargas's voice came through comms, calm but tense. "Alive. But they know. Reinforcements inbound. Heading north, rendezvous at Point Charlie." "Copy. Hold tight." Ethan exhaled, a long, slow release. He finally allowed himself a glance at the girl. Her eyes met his, fear and gratitude mingled in silent, unspoken recognition. She wasn't just a child, they had to find out why she had been targeted, why the message existed, and what it meant. The phrase, "white man don't forgive," was more than a warning. It was a promise, a harbinger of events that could sweep far beyond this isolated mesa. As the drone lifted off, carrying them into the uncertain safety of morning skies, Ethan's mind raced. Whoever had left her was patient, tactical, and ruthless. And now, he had no choice but to follow the trail into a storm far larger than this quiet, dust-ridden valley. Above, the ridge remained still, yet alive with the faint shimmer of adaptive camo as the enemy regrouped. Their eyes might not have seen him yet, but they would. And when they did, the real fight would begin. The girl shifted slightly, whispering words he didn't understand. Ethan tightened his grip, nodding. "We'll figure it out," he said, though even he knew that answers came with a price. The drone banked, heading north toward a fortified outpost barely visible on the horizon. The sun climbed higher, glinting off the rocks, catching on weapons, sensors, and the raw tension that hung over this land. The battle lines had been drawn, unseen but unyielding, and Ethan Carver, a man accustomed to the calculus of life and death, knew that survival, and the girl's life, depended on every careful choice from this moment forward. And somewhere, watching, waiting, the message carved in wood still burned in the shadows, "White man don't forgive." The fortified outpost was little more than a jagged cluster of modular towers and reinforced bunkers, built into the lip of the canyon like a stubborn stain on the desert. Ethan Carver had seen 100 bases in harsher theaters, but this one felt deliberate. Every corner, every shadow, every sensor hummed with purpose, as though it had been placed to anticipate intrusion decades before he arrived. The girl's presence pressed on him, a weight beyond his own body, beyond the armor and grit he relied on. Her silence was a language in itself, punctuated by tremors in her small frame. Inside the drone's cargo hold, the medic droid activated, its articulated arms extending with surgical precision. A soft hum filled the compartment as it scanned the girl, calculating injuries and administering rapid first aid. Ethan leaned back against the bulkhead, eyes flicking to the HUD as Vargas's voice cut through the static. "Carver, I've cleared the perimeter. You're safe for now. Intel team will debrief you in 15 minutes." What's the status on the subject? Ethan exhaled, voice rough. Stabilized. Conscious, but shaken. She's been through hell. Whoever left her wanted her to be found, and that message, white man don't forgive, it's more than a threat. Someone's testing us. Vargas's sigh carried over the calm, frustration tempered with tactical concern. Understood. We need to know what they want, and if they intend to escalate. Prep for full debrief. Commander Hollis will lead. Dr. Ilias will be on standby. Liaison will coordinate. ETA 20 minutes. Ethan's eyes traced the canyon walls visible through the reinforced observation window. Every ridge, every crag, every shadow felt alive, watching. He'd been trained to see the patterns, the small anomalies, the telltale signs of methodical preparation. The patrols that had left the girl weren't improvising. They had calculated, predicted, and executed. The outpost's gates opened mechanically, and a convoy of armored personnel carriers approached, the hum of electric motors and low-grade fusion engines blending with the desert wind. The girl flinched at the sound, and Ethan kept his hand on her shoulder, grounding her, giving her the certainty he had no time to feel himself. Inside the briefing room, the four anchors of the operation assembled. Commander Lila Vargas, tall and precise, her uniform marked with insignia that reflected years of field leadership, Dr. Rafik Ilias, a scientist and analyst specializing in adaptive biometrics and psychological profiling, Liaison Naya Kaur, a diplomat with military coordination experience, her posture rigid but watchful, and Ethan Carver, a seasoned tactician, rancher, and reluctant hero. The girl was seated on a reinforced cot, quiet, eyes wide, hands clasped together. She didn't speak, but her presence dominated the room. The message she carried, the crude, angry warning, was projected on the holoscreen above, letters jagged, almost primitive in their ferocity. Commander Vargas began, voice calm but unyielding. We don't know who orchestrated this, but the signature is consistent with previous asymmetric operations we've tracked in the region. Adaptive tech, low visibility, high psychological impact. Their goal isn't extraction, they're creating leverage. Dr. Ilias leaned forward, fingers brushing his notes. The pattern indicates precise timing. Look at the spacing of the patrols, the drone sweep angles, the thermal masking. Whoever did this anticipated discovery by a trained operative. This was designed to provoke a response. Ethan's jaw tightened. Provocation, yes. But to what end? The girl's not a target for ransom alone. Someone wanted a reaction, to see if we break protocol, reveal assets, or make an operational mistake. Liaison Corps interjected, voice measured but sharp. That's exactly it. It's political theater as much as tactical maneuver. They're signaling a capability, testing our coordination, and, perhaps most importantly, our restraint. We respond, we escalate. We hesitate, they gain leverage. Ethan studied the girl, finally breaking his gaze from the holoscreen. She flinched slightly at the sound of the word leverage, a flicker of understanding passing through her expression. Something in her past had made her wary of authority, wary of anyone, yet here she was, trapped between predator and protector. Then we adapt, he said, voice low, almost more to himself than the room. We don't react the way they expect. We move deliberately, predictably, but we take the initiative. We don't give them the story they want to write. Vargas nodded once. Good. Ethan, you're leading the reconnaissance. Rafik, we need every psychological and biometrics insight you can provide on her captors. Naya, you coordinate external communications, political containment. We move fast, but measured. Dr. Ilias's fingers hovered over the holoscreen, running simulations. The patrols used adaptive camo with limited latency. Their drones are effective up to 5 kilometers, but only at specific altitudes. We can mask heat signatures using terrain and reflective shielding, but it's a narrow window. Timing is critical. Ethan absorbed every word, the gears in his mind turning. Terrain masking, thermal reflection, predictive patrol patterns. He began mapping the canyon, overlaying sensor readings, wind, dust patterns, and potential engagement vectors. Every element a potential advantage or failure point. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher, baking the outpost's walls. The girl remained quiet, sometimes tracing the edges of the cot with a small, calloused finger. Ethan observed from across the room, noting the micro-movements, the subtle cues of fear and curiosity. These were insights no sensor could capture, and they would matter more than any tactical diagram. "Commander," Ethan said finally, voice cutting through the quiet hum of the room, "we need actionable intel. If they've left a signature pattern here, we can trace movement, predict next steps. But we have to go beyond surface-level analysis. We have to think like them, anticipate intent as much as movement." Vargas's eyes sharpened. "Agreed. You have authority. We synchronize on comms, but you lead the tactical plan." The first reconnaissance sortie was brief and brutal. Ethan took a single, lightweight drone and a thermal masking kit, flying low along the eastern ridge where patrols had last been observed. The desert stretched below, sun-baked and deceptively still. He watched through the drone's optics, scanning for movement, for heat anomalies, for anything that betrayed human presence. It came almost immediately, a glint in the distance, movement just beyond rock cover. Calculating, he maneuvered the drone closer. Adaptive camo. Thermal readings inconsistent. Someone was testing him, leaving breadcrumbs. A drone? A sensor package? Likely both. He traced the signals back to a small, abandoned mine shaft, long since deemed unusable, now repurposed as a forward observation post. He reported immediately. "Vargas. I've got a lead, abandoned mine, likely used as surveillance node. Heat signature inconsistent, probably adaptive tech. Could be trap, could be observation. Recommend approach with stealth, minimal exposure." Vargas's response was instantaneous. "Copy, Carver. You're cleared to investigate. Keep it quiet. Rafik, analyze potential traps remotely. Naya, maintain liaison with political containment. Do not engage unless necessary." The canyon wind whipped, carrying dust and the scent of dry stone. Ethan approached the mine cautiously, each step measured, every shadow a potential threat. He could hear the faint hum of electronics, almost imperceptible, registering on his visor. The girl had insisted on following at a distance, despite his protests. Her small, determined steps were silent, her presence another layer of complication he couldn't ignore. Inside the mine, the temperature dropped sharply, the desert sun replaced by shadow and the metallic scent of machinery. Ethan's hands brushed against the walls, scanning for triggers, tripwires, or hidden sensors. The first clue appeared, a series of small, deliberate scratches along the rock, consistent with adaptive camo footprints. Whoever had been here had marked a path either for them or for themselves. He followed, careful, senses sharpened, until he reached a central chamber. There, he found evidence of systematic observation, a series of monitors, logs, and drone docking stations. Every screen flickered briefly before powering down under his presence. A recording device continued, faint static betraying its operation. He tapped into the feed, voice low as he watched the flickering images. The patrols were not random. They had been watching him, the girl, the canyon, every move documented, analyzed. Patterns emerged, rotational sweeps, drone loops, reaction time tests. Each movement designed to provoke a misstep. To gauge decision-making under pressure. Ethan exhaled, mind racing. Whoever orchestrated this was not a mere band of mercenaries. This was a testing ground, a simulation run in the real world, and the girl had been the bait. Every instinct told him they would escalate. Every calculation confirmed it. A sudden vibration from his comm startled him. Vargas's voice, clipped, urgent. "Carver. We've picked up multiple heat signatures converging on your location. Reinforcements are delayed. You need extraction now. Ethan's pulse quickened. The girl stepped closer, eyes wide. He bent to her level. We move fast. You trust me? She nodded, barely, but enough. As he prepared to exit, a new signal appeared on his visor, adaptive camo, moving along the canyon wall, calculated to intercept. This was no longer reconnaissance. It was a trap, timed, engineered, and lethal. He braced, eyes scanning for advantage, calculating trajectory, wind, dust, and cover. The desert had become a chessboard, and every piece was moving. Ethan's hands tightened around his weapon, ready. The girl pressed against his side, silent but present, their fates now intertwined. And in the shadows, something watched, something waiting for the precise moment to strike. The canyon floor trembled under distant engines. Reinforcements were approaching, yes, but they weren't here yet. And the adaptive patrols were closing fast, their pattern optimized to test, to provoke, to punish. Ethan exhaled, mind sharp. All right, he muttered. Let's see what they want. The first volley of engagement was imminent, and there would be no room for error. The sun hung low over the desert rim, casting long, jagged shadows across the canyon floor. Ethan Carver moved with the girl pressed close, her small hand gripping his forearm, guiding him almost as much as he guided her. The mine reconnaissance had confirmed their suspicions, the adaptive patrols were not acting independently. They were controlled, coordinated, a small but lethal extension of a larger force. And now, the first real counterstrike had been triggered. The outpost had scrambled reinforcements, but the terrain's choke points favored the defenders, or rather, the provocateurs. The girl's eyes flicked nervously at every ridge, every wind-twisted bush. Ethan ignored the tremor in his own stomach. Years in asymmetrical warfare had taught him fear was only useful when it sharpened attention. Otherwise, it became a liability. The first strike came from the East Ridge, a pair of adaptive camouflaged units, moving in synchrony, utilizing thermal masking in terrain to approach unseen until the last second. Ethan's calm crackled. Vargas's voice cut through, "Carver, they've spotted you. You need to hold and delay until we can flank. Reinforcements ETA 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Not enough to engage directly, but enough to maneuver." Ethan ducked behind a boulder, recalibrating the girl's position. Her breathing was uneven, but steady. He whispered, "Stay low. Do exactly what I do." The first enemy fired, energy projectiles streaking past with a low hum, carving dust columns where they impacted. They weren't lethal at long range, but enough to pin him down. He counted the timing of the pulses, noting the delay between shots. Adaptive tech allowed them to predict human reaction within milliseconds, but it couldn't account for improvisation. He pressed the girl against him, aiming the reflective decoy mirror toward the ridge, creating a glare that drew their fire away. A calculated risk, but it worked. One of the units diverted, revealing its flank for a brief, deadly window. Ethan moved fast, rolling across the uneven ground, guiding the girl in a series of controlled evasions. Each step, each pivot, was measured to avoid creating detectable heat signatures in his wake. He calculated trajectory, friction, dust dispersion, elements that a casual observer would never notice but which determine survival in these skirmishes. The girl whispered, in a fractured, foreign tongue, something that sounded like a warning. Ethan didn't understand the words, but the tone was urgent, almost commanding. He glanced at her, her expression sharpened, and she pointed. There, in the lee of a rock formation, lay a series of subtle depressions, tripwire anchors. Small, almost invisible, but lethal if misjudged. Whoever had placed them had anticipated pursuit. He cursed under his breath. Adaptive patrols were precise, but predictable once you understood their methodology. The enemy relied on fear and anticipation, Ethan relied on observation and deduction. Slowly, methodically, he led the girl through the trap field, timing each step to the rhythm of the desert wind, the oscillation of shadows, and the timing of distant patrol movements. At last, they reached a dry wash, a narrow ravine that cut a shallow path through the canyon. Reinforcements were visible now, a faint shimmer of heat signatures and armored silhouettes approaching from the north. But the adaptive patrols were regrouping. A second wave, larger, more deliberate, began converging on their path. Ethan calculated engagement ranges, weapon cycles, and cover points. The patrol's kinetics were advanced, high-velocity projectiles with limited heat blooms, making traditional detection difficult. Ethan crouched, whispering to the girl. "When I give the signal, we move fast. Stay behind me, trust me." Her nod was slight but determined. He wasn't just a protector now, he was a strategist, a conductor orchestrating movement, patience, and timing in a deadly dance. The first volley came as they hit the open wash. Projectiles streaked past, striking rocks and scattering debris. Ethan rolled, pulling the girl behind him. He used a combination of dust, terrain, and reflective surfaces to obscure their thermal signatures, slowing the enemy's targeting algorithms. He noted the pattern, every 3 pulses, a slight lag in aim recalibration, a vulnerability. Exploiting it, he moved quickly, stepping on the exact spots he calculated would minimize heat reflection. The patrols adjusted, but the delay was enough. They reached a small alcove halfway down the wash. Ethan paused, scanning for secondary threats. Nothing immediate. The girl's grip on his arm tightened. "Why me?" she whispered. The words were halting, hesitant. Her accent was thick, but clear. Ethan glanced down, eyes softening briefly. "I don't know," he admitted. "But we're not going to let them decide your fate." A low rumble echoed from the canyon walls. Ethan tensed. Drones, dozens of them, emerged from crevices, hovering silently, scanning with infrared, ultraviolet, and acoustic sensors. They weren't attacking yet, only observing. But every second brought them closer to lethal engagement ranges. He had to move. He triggered a remote EMP pulse from his wrist device, careful to calibrate output to disable the drones temporarily without collapsing the outpost's comm relay. A low pop hung through the canyon as the drones flickered, systems temporarily scrambled. He counted 30 precious seconds, enough to gain distance, not enough for safety. As they advanced, Ethan detected another anomaly. The girl's small movements, subtle as they were, seemed deliberate. She wasn't merely following, she was signaling, pointing subtly to hidden alcoves and potential ambush points. He realized, with a chill, that she had not been passive during her captivity. She understood terrain, concealment, evasion. Her knowledge might be instinct, survival, or training. Either way, it was invaluable. A sudden flare in his visor indicated energy weapons locked on. The adaptive patrols had recovered from the EMP and were targeting again. Ethan lunged to cover, the girl pressed against him. He counted pulse cycles, noted trajectory arcs, calculated deflection angles. Then, improvising, he activated a portable kinetic shield, deflecting the next volley and giving him a clear line to push forward. They emerged from the wash onto a plateau. Reinforcements were close now, small squads, armored but wary, waiting for his signal. Ethan didn't wait. He directed movement with short, clipped commands, guiding the girl and units through a flanking maneuver that mirrored the enemy's predictable patrol pattern. Every step was orchestrated to bait, to provoke, and to exploit. Dr. Ilias's analysis came through comms. "Carver, the pattern indicates rotational surveillance. There's a command node further up the ridge. Likely central to coordination. If we disrupt it, we can create a temporary blind spot. But it's heavily defended." Ethan's mind raced. "We'll take the risk. Prepare breaching units. Minimal engagement until we reach node. Keep casualties low. The girl stays close. She's critical for intel." The squad moved with precision, descending the plateau toward the ridge node. Enemy fire began again, sporadic but sharp. Kinetic shields absorbed some impact, while personnel ducked behind terrain, utilizing every available cover. Ethan adjusted constantly, redirecting fire, guiding movement, calculating risks. Every step forward revealed another layer of enemy preparation, yet he noticed exploitable patterns, blind spots, delayed rotation cycles, slightly inconsistent thermal masking. They reached the base of the ridge node, a series of reinforced panels and a low-emission generator array. Ethan gestured to the girl. "Help me here." Quietly. She nodded, pressing against a console, revealing hidden access points, wires, switches, and calibration nodes. Ethan realized she wasn't just following instructions, she understood electronic systems, subtle manipulations, signaling she had skills honed during captivity. Dr. Ilias's voice crackled through. "You're on the right track. Isolate power to comm relay first, then we can exploit the blind spot to insert our microsurveillance units. Keep extraction routes viable." Ethan nodded. With the girl's assistance, they disabled the comm relay. A sudden wave of silence swept across the ridge, drones and patrols blinked offline, sensors momentarily dead. It was enough. Reinforcements surged upward, striking from the blind spot, neutralizing the remaining units with minimal exposure. But victory came at a price. One unit, overzealous in the rush, triggered a hidden pulse mine. The explosion threw Ethan to the ground, ringing in his ears. Dust filled his lungs, obscuring vision. The girl screamed, a sound that ripped through the chaos. Ethan's training took over, he shielded her, rolled clear, and signaled squad medics to extract the injured. One casualty, minor but permanent, a reminder of the stakes. As the dust settled, they discovered captured intel, encrypted drives, communication logs, and biometric records. The data revealed more than tactical patterns. The patrols were just one cell of a larger organization, their operations coordinated across multiple desert sectors. Every movement, every provocation, every message had been part of a deliberate strategy to test, to intimidate, and to manipulate. Ethan studied the girl. She understood more than she let on. Her eyes, bright and calculating, hinted at secrets yet unrevealed, knowledge that could turn the tide, or draw them deeper into peril. He realized that while they had won the skirmish, the war, the intelligence battle, the psychological chess, had only begun. And then, as if confirming his fear, a single encrypted message arrived on his comm. He read it quickly, feeling a chill spread across his spine. "You've seen the first move. Now the board shifts. Next is your choice, adapt, or fail." The adaptive patrols had escalated beyond simple provocation. They had baited, tested, and exposed weaknesses. And now, the real game had begun. The girl pressed close to him, small fingers trembling. Ethan took her hand, gripping tightly. "We keep moving," he said, voice low but firm. "And we learn. Every step. Every choice. Nothing else matters." Above them, the desert sky darkened with the shadow of an approaching storm, wind and dust signaling the onset of chaos. Reinforcements regrouped, intel analyzed, and the next move, dangerous, complex, and high stakes, awaited. Ethan looked to the horizon. Somewhere in the dunes, someone was watching, calculating, anticipating. And they would not wait. The war of shadows, technology, and strategy was only beginning. The storm rolled across the desert like an approaching predator, wind whipping dust and sand into jagged currents that scoured the canyon floor. Ethan Carver crouched in the shadow of the ridge node, the girl pressed close, her small body trembling against his chest, yet her eyes sharp with awareness. The captured intel had revealed more than just enemy movement, it hinted at a central command point buried deep in the canyon's heart, heavily fortified, adaptive, and lethal. Reaching it would require precision, timing, and an orchestration of forces that balanced speed with restraint. Failure was not an option. Commander Vargas had convened a full operational council. Dr. Rafik Ilias analyzed patterns in real time, projecting predictive models on the holoscreen. Liaison Naya Corps coordinated air support and diplomatic containment, ensuring that any engagement would remain contained within the desert's isolated sectors. Ethan reviewed the map, his mind layering terrain, patrol cycles, wind patterns, and thermal signatures over the projected assault. Vargas, Ethan said, voice taut, we have to approach multivector. Any single point of attack is a trap. They'll anticipate a frontal assault. Terrain masking gives us options: shadow, elevation, and wind cover. We split forces into 3 vectors: diversion, infiltration, and overwatch. Vargas nodded. Agreed. Timing will be critical. You coordinate infiltration. Liaison, you manage diversion and local observers. Rafiq, provide real-time intel, adjust as variables change. We have 6 minutes to synchronize. No margin for error. The girl, silent but alert, shifted slightly, pointing toward a narrow ravine leading to a concealed canyon corridor. Ethan followed her gaze. She had been observing terrain patterns during their skirmishes, noting patrol blind spots, minor shifts in sand and stone, details too subtle for sensors. He realized her knowledge was not instinct alone. She had survived this desert by necessity, and her observations could guide the infiltration team past traps that no algorithm would predict. Good, Ethan murmured. We'll use that path. Minimal exposure, thermal masking from the rocks, plus the wind will disrupt sensor calibration. The team moved in staggered formation. Ethan led the infiltration vector with the girl beside him, reinforcing each step. Reinforcements and diversion teams fanned out to create false sensor blips, drawing the enemy's attention toward predictable channels. Drones hovered silently above, relaying real-time telemetry while the girl's small hands assisted Ethan with minor adjustments to deployed sensors. She wasn't just following orders, she was anticipating, improvising, providing insights that changed the outcome of each tactical decision. As they advanced, adaptive patrols materialized on the ridge above, their camo fluctuating against the rocky backdrop. Ethan counted pulse cycles and recalculated trajectories in seconds. The first volley of projectiles arced down, striking the rock face with sharp pings. Dust and debris clouded the corridor, providing fleeting cover. Move! Ethan barked, and the team surged forward. The girl pressed close, instinctively adjusting her steps to minimize detectable heat signatures. Ethan noticed a faint tremor in her hand, a memory, perhaps, or a residual fear, but she didn't hesitate. Every instinct and ounce of courage mattered now. The infiltration team reached the canyon's central approach, a labyrinthine path of jagged cliffs and narrow ledges. Sensors indicated multiple adaptive patrols, plus automated turrets calibrated for thermal detection. Ethan studied the feed, calculating angles of engagement, escape routes, and timing windows. Thermal reflection on 3, he murmured. A reflective panel angled to the sun distracted the first patrol's sensors. Turret cycles misfired, creating a temporary blind spot. Ethan and the girl slipped through, the team following in precise cadence. They reached the base of the command point, a fortified compound carved into the canyon wall. Energy shields shimmered faintly, powered by fusion cells that could withstand multiple volleys from conventional weapons. Ethan crouched, evaluating approach vectors. Any misstep would trigger alarms, alerting patrols across the sector. Dr. Ilias's calm voice crackled, "Carver, the shields have a latency flaw, microsecond gaps every 12 cycles. We can exploit them for entry, but timing must be perfect." Ethan nodded, eyes scanning every shadow, every detail of the compound's facade. "We synchronize with diversion. On my mark, breach and move. No errors." Diversion teams launched simultaneous pulse flares and kinetic simulations, drawing attention north and east. Adaptive patrols moved to intercept, momentarily leaving the primary access point exposed. Ethan timed it, counting microseconds in his mind like beats of a drum. "Now," he shouted, and the team surged forward. The girl led the way, small hands interfacing with the compound's secondary access panel. The shield flickered briefly, perfect timing. Ethan pushed through, the girl at his side, squad following. They entered a narrow corridor, lights flickering as systems cycled in response to the breach. Inside, the compound was a maze of reinforced corridors, sensor arrays, and tech nodes. Ethan signaled the team to split, following pre-assigned paths to disable security, neutralize patrols, and secure the central command hub. Each movement was synchronized to the predictive algorithms provided by Dr. Ilias. Every door, every corridor had contingencies, every corner was calculated risk. They reached the central hub, a control chamber glowing with holodisplays, mapping patrol sectors, drone positions, and remote turrets. Ethan and the girl moved quickly, interfacing with the systems. The girl's hands, delicate yet confident, navigated complex access points, disabling surveillance and rerouting data streams. She wasn't just helping, she was indispensable. Almost there, Ethan muttered, his voice low, adrenaline sharpening every sense. Keep moving. No hesitation. Outside, adaptive patrols were beginning to realize the diversion was working. A few units attempted to breach from the rear, but Overwatch teams and predictive positioning neutralized them with precision. The infiltration team held the line inside, every second critical to maintaining control of the central hub. Then it happened, a betrayal. Liaison Corps' feed showed movement from a shadowed corridor, one of their own reinforcements had turned. Ethan's mind raced. A captured squad member had been compromised, likely bribed or coerced. The security node flickered under unauthorized access, and an alarm began to pulse through the compound. Internal breach. Ethan barked. Contain and isolate. The girl stays with me. No one goes rogue. The traitor's interference triggered secondary defenses. Energy shutters slammed, corridors became traps, and environmental controls fluctuated. Heat and pressure spikes threatened team safety. Ethan adapted instantly, guiding the girl through a concealed maintenance shaft, leveraging his intimate knowledge of structural layouts. They emerged into the main control chamber just as Dr. Ilias remotely accessed system override. Carver, you have 5 cycles before full lockdown. Use the blind spots we identified. Ethan moved methodically, guiding the girl to key interface panels. She interfaced with biometric overrides, clearing pathways while he monitored patrol movements and turrets. Every action had to be perfect, every second mattered. Finally, the central console unlocked, revealing encrypted files, patrol logs, and command communications. Ethan accessed them with Dr. Ilias' remote guidance. What they found was staggering, a coordinated network spanning multiple desert sectors, dozens of adaptive patrols, and plans for large-scale psychological manipulation. Every provocation, every message, had been part of a broader strategy to test response times, gauge ethical decision-making, and manipulate operational behavior. The betrayal weighed heavily. Ethan realized the enemy had anticipated internal fractures, exploiting even the smallest weakness in trust and coordination. But the girl's presence, her knowledge, and her quick thinking had been the decisive variable. Without her, the breach would have failed. As they secured the hub, alarms finally faded. Reinforcements sealed external corridors, neutralizing adaptive patrols that had tried to flank from above. Ethan exhaled, muscles tight, ears ringing from exertion and stress. He looked down at the girl, fear, exhaustion, and something else in her eyes, determination. She had survived, contributed, and, in subtle ways, led the operation. Dr. Ilias' voice cut through the calm now but tinged with awe. You've done it, Carver. The command node is under control. Data integrity preserved. You have full situational awareness of their operations. Ethan allowed himself a moment, standing in the glow of the control chamber, dust and sweat streaking his face. Not done, he said. This is just the beginning. The board has shifted, yes, but the game continues. We've exposed patterns, disrupted operations, but the network is resilient. And someone, somewhere, will be watching, calculating our next move. The girl shifted closer. Safe? She asked softly. Ethan placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. For now. But you've done more than survive. You've helped turn the tide. Above them, the desert sky cleared slightly, the storm breaking, leaving the sun low and sharp, casting elongated shadows across the canyon. The team regrouped, casualties accounted for, and operational integrity maintained. But Ethan knew the cost had been high, not just in resources or manpower, but in trust and moral compromise. The betrayal was a lesson in vigilance, and the girl's resilience a lesson in improvisation. They would have time to breathe, briefly, before the final confrontation. Before the enemy had the chance to retaliate, to adapt again, to escalate. And Ethan, veteran of countless theaters, understood the immutable truth: in wars of shadows, of technology and human grit, victory was measured not just in tactical wins, but in lessons learned and lives preserved. He turned to the girl once more, noting her steadiness, the subtle pride in her stance. She had become more than a survivor, she was a key factor in their ongoing strategy, an unexpected ally with insight born of necessity and experience. And he realized that the coming endgame would demand the same combination of discipline, coordination, and sacrifice that had carried them through this stage of the battle. The command hub systems hummed softly, illuminating faces tired but resolute. The betrayal had been contained, the network disrupted, but the overarching plan remained. Someone, somewhere, was already calculating the next move. And when they did, Ethan Carver and his team, guided by ingenuity, resolve, and the girl's keen insight, would be ready. The desert was quiet now, but tension lingered like the heat rising off the rocks. Every shadow, every sound, every whisper of wind was a reminder: the final confrontation awaited. And when it came, nothing would be left to chance. The canyon lay under a silver dusk, the desert wind cutting like sharpened glass across jagged cliffs. Ethan Carver crouched at the edge of the ridge, surveying the enemy's final stronghold, the central leverage point. It was a fortified compound unlike anything they had faced: multiple energy shields, adaptive camo arrays, automated defense turrets, and an intricate network of sensors. Every inch had been designed to exploit human error, every pathway calculated to trap, divide, and conquer. Beside him, the girl adjusted the calibration of a portable sensor node, her small hands precise, confident, and deliberate. She had grown into an operative of sorts, her understanding of terrain, machinery, and timing surpassing anyone's expectations. Ethan glanced at her briefly. "Ready?" he asked. Her nod was faint but resolute. "Ready." Commander Vargas's voice came over comms. "Carver, all vectors in position. Diversion team set. Extraction routes prepped. You have 10 minutes before the enemy shifts to full lockdown mode. This is it." Ethan exhaled. Every tactical choice in the past 48 hours had led to this point. The captured intel from the Ridge node had revealed the enemy's vulnerabilities: microsecond latency in shield recalibration, blind spots in surveillance during simultaneous drone sweeps, and predictable reaction patterns when confronted with multidirectional threats. Exploiting these would require perfect coordination, split-second timing, and no margin for hesitation. The infiltration team moved first, descending into a narrow canyon corridor toward the compound's main entrance. Ethan adjusted the girl's trajectory, guiding her along the path that minimized thermal exposure and avoided pressure-sensitive sensors embedded in the canyon floor. Behind them, diversion teams executed coordinated pulse flares, smoke generators, and kinetic projections, drawing enemy focus toward the northern ridges. "Microsecond gaps in the shields are now," Dr. Ilias confirmed over comms. "Timing your breach in 5, 4, 3. Ethan signaled the team to surge forward. The energy shields flickered, creating a brief, lethal window. He led the girl through first, her small hands tracing the control panels he had taught her to operate. She manipulated the biometric locks with astonishing speed, overriding security measures that had been designed to resist intrusion for weeks. They entered the compound's inner corridors, a maze of reinforced walls, sensor grids, and automated turrets. Every turn was a calculated risk. Ethan deployed kinetic shields and reflective decoys, masking thermal signatures and redirecting projectiles. The team moved in perfect cadence, following pre-planned routes, adjusting to threats in real time. Suddenly, the compound's internal alarms blared. A failsafe had been triggered. Automated turrets whirred to life, projecting high-velocity energy pulses down the corridors. Ethan reacted instantly, crouching behind a reinforced wall, signaling the team to form a defensive perimeter. The girl, surprisingly unflinching, activated an improvised EMP device. It sent a pulse through the corridor, temporarily disabling turrets and neutralizing sensor arrays. The corridor was silent again, except for the low hum of energy shielding recovering. Ethan glanced at her. "You're remarkable," he said quietly. She didn't respond, eyes fixed on the panel. Action was priority, words unnecessary. Beyond the corridor lay the central command hub, the enemy's nerve center. Monitors displayed patrol grids, drone positions, and communications networks spanning multiple desert sectors. Ethan accessed the hub, guided remotely by Dr. Ilias. "We've got full visibility now. Every patrol, every drone. They're exposed." But exposure brought danger. Through a reinforced observation window, Ethan detected enemy reinforcements converging from hidden positions, adaptive units equipped with advanced camo and predictive targeting. They had anticipated the breach. The window for neutralization was narrow, and every delay increased the risk of the girl or his team being caught in lethal crossfire. Ethan adjusted tactical feeds, overlaying predictive movement patterns. "We'll split focus," he said. "Diversion continues outside, inside, we isolate central defenses. Cover me and the girl, I'll disable the comm relay. It's our only chance to prevent escalation across other sectors." The team moved with calculated precision. Ethan and the girl reached the comm relay chamber. The girl interfaced with controls, bypassing encrypted locks while Ethan provided cover, monitoring every heat signature and pulse frequency. Minutes stretched like hours, any error, any hesitation, could trigger an immediate defensive response. A sudden burst of projectiles struck near the chamber entrance. An enemy patrol had infiltrated. Ethan returned fire, precision shots exploiting their predictable pulse cycles. The team engaged seamlessly, neutralizing threats while minimizing casualties. Dr. Ilias's voice came over comms, "Relay override in 3, 2, 1, the compound's communications fell silent. Drones and patrols outside became disoriented, energy shields flickering under coordinated disruption. Ethan exhaled, scanning for remaining threats. But the final challenge arrived. The enemy commander appeared on the main holoscreen, projected in the central hub. Calm, calculating, and visibly aware of their presence. "You've done well," the figure said, voice even. "But your actions have consequences. Every intervention, every disruption, has been observed. And now, we escalate." Ethan's mind raced. The enemy had anticipated every move, but not the girl's involvement. Her instincts had altered outcomes in subtle yet critical ways. He realized the final resolution would require both tactical brilliance and psychological leverage. He addressed the girl quietly. "We need to project intent, not aggression. Make them see calculation, not chaos. We can force surrender without unnecessary loss." She nodded, understanding immediately. Together, they manipulated the hub's systems, projecting false troop movements, generating phantom patrols, and simulating reinforcements converging from multiple directions. The enemy commander reacted, issuing rapid commands, attempting to recalibrate. Every second of delay worked in Ethan's favor. Outside, diversion teams executed their maneuvers flawlessly, drawing the remaining adaptive patrols into predictable paths. Reinforcements positioned on ridges completed encirclement, creating a controlled kill box that contained enemy movement without excessive engagement. Finally, the enemy commander made a critical error, attempting to breach their internal systems personally, exposing their location. Ethan exploited it immediately, isolating the command node and disabling power to all defense turrets. The compound fell silent, tension thick but controlled. The girl's hands hovered over the control panel. Ethan instructed her calmly, "Secure intel. Leave no trace of our intrusion." She executed with precision, downloading encrypted files, mapping patrol grids, and capturing operational data that would prevent future threats. The enemy commander, realizing the situation, sent a final communication, a mixture of acknowledgement and concession. "You have adapted. You have succeeded, for now." The calm after the storm was deceptive. Ethan and the girl moved swiftly through the compound, extracting critical systems and preparing the route for reinforcements. Minimal exposure, maximum efficiency, discipline and coordination had won the day. Outside, the desert wind had subsided, leaving an eerie silence broken only by the faint hum of surviving systems. The team regrouped, accounting for casualties and securing the perimeter. Ethan surveyed the scene, operational success achieved through precision, sacrifice, and unorthodox collaboration. The girl stood beside him, small but resolute. Her eyes, bright and unwavering, reflected a mix of fear, pride, and understanding. She had survived captivity, contributed decisively, and now shared in the victory. Commander Vargas appeared via comm, voice steady. "Carver, team, excellent work. Compound secured, intel secured, casualties minimized. Debrief and extraction will proceed shortly. You've set the standard for asymmetric engagement and operational coordination." Ethan exhaled, muscles tense, mind still racing through the sequence of events. "We've won today," he said, eyes on the horizon. "But the lessons, the methods, we carry them forward. The network will adapt. We must be ready." Dr. Ilias interjected, analytical and measured. "The data alone will change future operations. Adaptive patrols, psychological manipulation, terrain exploitation, this intel is invaluable. And the girl, her capabilities will not be overlooked. She's critical to understanding and anticipating future threats." Ethan looked down at her. "She's more than critical. She's alive because she adapted. Because she understood what no algorithm could predict, human instinct and courage." Naya Kor's voice came last, tempered with relief. "Extraction teams in position. The canyon's cleared. We'll evacuate now. Political containment maintained. The aftermath is under control." As they boarded the hover transports, Ethan allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. The desert stretched endlessly, its jagged cliffs and silent dunes hiding secrets, dangers, and the lessons of the battle just concluded. Lives had been tested, trust had been betrayed and restored, and human ingenuity, combined with grit, discipline, and improvisation, had triumphed. The girl remained silent beside him, watching the desert recede beneath the transport's hull. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her, feeling the weight of both responsibility and relief. The compound, the patrols, the command node, all would be studied, understood, and used to prevent future crises. But more than that, Ethan knew the victory carried a lesson for every human operator, tactician, and soldier: adaptability, courage, and careful calculation could overcome even the most advanced technology and the most insidious strategies. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting crimson shadows across the canyon, Ethan reflected on the journey. From the lonely discovery of the girl hanging with a warning message to the decisive, coordinated assault on the enemy's heart, every moment had required focus, ingenuity, and human perseverance. The hover transports carried them upward, away from the canyon, leaving the battlefield behind. The girl looked out at the desert, then at Ethan, and finally allowed herself a faint smile, quiet acknowledgement that she had survived, influenced the outcome, and perhaps, in some small but significant way, saved them all. Ethan Carver exhaled, knowing the desert had tested him, the girl, and the team to their limits. And yet, despite the trials, despite the betrayals and sacrifices, they had emerged victorious, disciplined, coordinated, and resilient. Above the canyon, the wind carried whispers of the storm's passing, and for a moment, all was still. Victory was not complete, it never would be, but today, the lesson was clear: in the interplay of human courage, tactical discipline, and adaptive thinking, even the most formidable adversaries could be overcome. And somewhere in the shadows of the desert, someone was watching, learning, calculating the next move. But for now, Ethan Carver, the girl, and their team had proven the enduring truth of warfare: strategy, human grit, and adaptability would always tip the balance, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The canyon disappeared beneath the horizon, leaving only the memory of struggle, triumph, and the beginning of a new understanding, an unspoken vow that the lessons learned here would endure, shaping every engagement yet to come. The battle was over. The war, however, was far from finished.